Good day, Mrs. Rodriguez here. And what I've done is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go through the three branches of government first, and then we'll do the executive branch, which covers the president, and also the legislative branch and the judicial branch. So you'll have all of these combined in one video. I'm reading them to you. If you don't want to do that, if you want to just read the paperwork, or worst case scenario, you didn't get the paperwork, I also gave you the website where this comes from, and that is located right below. So make sure you do the pull down tab and you'll be able to see that website that you can click on. I've attached that for you. So we're going to start out with the three branches of the government, which we know there's three branches. We've been going over this for a while. Our federal government has three parts. They are the executive, president, about 5 million workers, legislative, Senate and the House of Representatives, and judicial branch, the Supreme Court and the lower courts. The President of the United States administers the executive branch of our government. The President enforces the laws that the legislative branch, Congress, makes, and the President is elected by the United States citizens, 18 years of age or older, who vote in the presidential elections in their states. These votes are tallied by states and form the electoral college system. States have the number of electoral votes, which equal the number of senators and representatives they have. It is possible to have the most popular votes throughout the nation and not, make note of this, not win the electoral college votes. The legislative part of the government is called Congress. Congress makes our laws. Congress is divided into two parts. One part is called the Senate. There are 100 senators, 2 from each of our states. Another part is called the House of Representatives. Representatives meet together to discuss ideas and decide if these ideas or bills should become laws. There are 435 representatives, right? The number of representatives each state gets determined by its population, so it's different for those. Some states have just 2. Others have as many as 40. Both senators and representatives are elected by the eligible voters in their states. The judicial part of our government includes the Supreme Court and 9 justices. They are special judges who interpret the laws according to the Constitution. These justices only hear cases that pertain to issues related to the Constitution. They are the highest court in our country, and the federal judicial system also has lower courts located in each state to hear their cases involving federal issues. All 3 parts of our federal government have the main court headquarters in the city of Washington, D.C. Along with that, you're going to find some other information. Now, the executive branch is the next one I'm going to read to you. The Constitution says that the United States must have a president and a vice president. These 2 people and the people who work for them belong to the executive branch of the federal government. It is the duty of the President of the United States to run the federal government and to see that the laws of our nation are carried out. The President is the highest representative of the people of our nation. The presidential seal has 50 stars surrounding it to show that the president represents all United States citizens. He or she must focus on the welfare of the entire nation, not just the people in one state or district like senators or representatives. The president represents our country in discussions with other nations, leads our nation in times of war, makes suggestions to Congress about laws, writes the budget, but must get Congress to approve it, works closely with Congress to get laws passed and rejected. The president has the most important job in the nation. If a president dies or is in some other way unable to carry out his or her job, the vice president becomes the new president of the United States. The president chooses people to help him or her. Some of these are the president's personal staff, like the press secretary, speech writers, and policy aides. Others are the heads of executive cabinet departments. Others are heads of White House offices and agencies. So that is that one. The judicial branch. The judicial branch of the federal government interprets and reviews the laws of the nation. The group that has the job of interpreting and reviewing the laws of the land is the Supreme Court. It is the highest court in the nation, and the Supreme Court of the United States meets the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. Many arguments about federal rules and laws come up in such a large country as the United States. Someone must be like an umpire and make the final decision. Someone must settle these arguments in a fair way. The Constitution has a special plan to solve this problem. It provides for a system of federal courts in the judicial branch of the government. The Supreme Court is the highest court. There are also lower courts. Disagreements and trials may start in the lower courts. These lower courts are called federal district courts. They are federal district courts in every state and in the District of Columbia. All right, even though the District of Columbia, that's why it's noted that way, is not a state, they still have a federal district court, just like our state. Our state has a federal district court, which is located in Denver, and every one of the states has those. They are located in the state capital. That's where the federal system works out of in each state. If someone does lose a case in the federal district court, he can try to have the decision changed by taking his case to a higher court called the Circuit Court of Appeals. If he loses there, too, he may be able to take his case to the final judges, the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. The Supreme Court only accepts cases on a special constitutional problems. What this court says is the last decision. There is no appeal beyond that Supreme Court. Now, there are questions at the end of each one of these, okay? The legislative branch. You know that in a representative democracy, the people have a voice in the making of their laws. Voters in our country elect people to represent and to serve as their voice in the law-making process. Laws are made by the men and women and who are elected to Congress by the voters of each state. Congress is made up of two houses, just the way most of the state legislatures are made up. The upper house is called the Senate, and the lower house is called the House of Representatives. Men and women who belong to the House of Representatives are called representatives. They may also be called congressmen or congresswomen. The number of senators in each Congress is spelled out in the Constitution. Under the Constitution, each state has 2 senators. However, the number of representatives a state has depends on the population of that state. Every state must have at least 1 representative though. Law now sets that the total number of representatives is at 435. This means that as the population changes in a state, so does the number of representatives that state is allowed to have. But the total must not change. Therefore, as some states gain representatives, other states may lose representatives. Each of the 50 states elects 2 men and women to the Senate of the United States. These senators stay in office for at least 6 years. There they must try to get reelected again if they want to stay in the Senate. The number of representatives a state sends to the House of Representatives depends on how many people live in the state. Representatives stay in office for only 2 years. If they want to stay in the House of Representatives, they must run for election every 2 years. Congress meets in Washington, D.C., the capital city of the United States. D.C. stands for the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is not a state. It is not in a state either. It is a district which acts like a combination of a city and a state. The District of Columbia is a unique area where national government business is conducted. All right, now I said I gave you the information, so I will need you to look at that. The last one in this packet is, why does the president need a cabinet? Every president has a lot to do, especially a modern-day United States president. He or she must oversee dealings with foreign countries in the defense of our land, keep an eye on how our farms are doing, try to make sure the industry and business of the country are humming along, make sure that there are jobs for workers in our nation, see that laws of the country are carried out and carried out fairly, guard our national forests, parks, and our resources for the use of all the people, and protect the land, protect the public from harmful diseases or hazards. The list could go on and on and on. How can one person do all this? One trick a president has is to delegate jobs. He or she assigns or turns over much of the day-to-day work to others. A good business leader, a principal of a school, or the editor of a newspaper does this too. They pick qualified people to do certain work, expect them to do their best, and then report back on what they've accomplished. The top person, such as the president, will probably make the final decisions, but he or she can't possibly do all the work day to day. The President of the United States delegates much work to the cabinet. Each cabinet member is the head of an executive department of the government. The president meets with his or her cabinet frequently to hear their reports or their suggestions. Usually they meet together once a week or every other week. They meet in the cabinet room next to the president's Oval Office in the White House, West Wing. This room faces the Rose Garden and is a beautifully room furnished with draperies, chandeliers, and leather chairs. I think you should probably go and check that out. Very cool place. President George Washington developed the cabinet system by making the heads of the existing 3 executive departments and the Attorney General to meet with him on a regular basis to discuss issues of importance and to report on the department's work. The first 4 cabinet positions in 1789 were the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, Secretary of War, and the Attorney General. The formation of departments is mentioned in Article 2, Section 2 of our Constitution. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. As the country became larger and more complicated, other departments were added. At this time, we now have 15 executive departments. So you can find out where those are. It's under that library, and there's questions, like I said, at the end of each one of these little articles. Just answer them on notebook paper if you do not have them in your packet, and I really apologize. Stay healthy, and I miss you guys. Take care.